Hi, everybody. The complex business of sports streaming, fragmentation, bundling, and retention. So just to start, as Dan said this morning, know your audience. How many of you normally watch sports? Okay, I wouldn't expect less than that, everybody. How many of you work in sports streaming in some capacity? Ooh, so they know what we're talking about. Yeah. This is very dangerous now. So we have experts in the room. So in theory, I normally look at this business as the fans, the streaming, the clients, the platform, and the vendors. And I'm always trying to assess, how the fans are doing in this moment, how the streaming platform are doing, how the vendors. There's always a connection between one and the other. And normally everything starts from the sport. So obviously, I think you've seen being here, Caitlin Clark last night. And I don't know, the NFL having a great season, the NBA having a great season, Formula One doing amazing, tennis, especially for us Italian, great. The Germans, they finally have another club winning the Bundesliga after 11 years with the same boring club, my club in Germany. But so sport is great. In theory, the fans have a lot of passion, emotions to share, great content to consume. So why is it a complex business? So that's kind of the question, and going a bit more sophisticated in that we want to possibly answer. And with me to do it, it's Christy Tanner, can I say CBS, and a lot more than that, but a bit, we do a lot of role playing because it's quite a diverse panel, no? I can represent a bit the sport aspect. She will play, even if she has a lot more features in her. The big media, I would call it. And then we have Yannick Ramcke, OneFootball, a platform with a specific approach to OTT. New York, Germany. Andreas Heyden, to be honest, ex-Bundesliga, but now Dine. It's a platform in Germany. Andreas will explain everything about it. And the Cowboy. David Guinan, the Cowboy channel. So let's go with Christy and explain a bit what you have done, why you're sitting in this panel with clearly a lot of reputation and expertise in the subject matter.
Thank you, Carlo. I am Christy Tanner. I have been coming to NAB for more than a decade now. I started in streaming when I ran TV Guide Digital when Hulu and Netflix launched. So this goes back a long way. And speaking of retention and bundling, I've seen so many changes in that area. I sold TV Guide Digital to CBS Interactive, and then at CBS, I launched 15 streaming services, channels, apps, et cetera. We were distributed on more than 25 devices, services, and platforms. So that part of my career started in 2015. And we really had to build a lot ourselves over that period of time. And one of the things that's really striking and amazing to see here today is how far we've come in terms of being able to plug into different technologies. And now I consult for big media companies and startups. I work with a sports streaming startup called Swerve. And I'm also a part-time investment banker. I work with Oakland's De Silva and Phillips on M&A in media, advertising, and marketing. So yes, it's the complex business of being me, and I can tell you more about all of it. But I'm excited to talk about sports streaming today.
I think it's a portfolio career, something I'm getting familiar after 35 years in a vendor that was called Delta Tribe, where I spent all my pre-internet, etc., post-internet, post-mobile, post-streaming career. Yannick, from Germany,
Indeed.
OneFootball.
Indeed.
Tell us about.
I mean, this is a hard one to follow, right? It's a portfolio career, especially when it comes to how much different things have you done in your career. I have started and not stopped yet with OneFootball. So it starts and stops there. So Yannick Ramcke, GM OTT at OneFootball. And I would say first things first, because not everybody might be familiar with OneFootball is all about. I guess most importantly, it's the European version of the game. So talking about soccer, but please not One Soccer, that's a different company. And but we are not a new kid on the block. We are around for more than 15 years. Started out as a simple, plain live scoring app. Back then, that was actually something innovative. We're among the first, I think, 1,000 apps in the Apple App Store, which gave us, I would say, really a first mover advantage, and kept transforming, I would say, and evolving ever since. I would say the biggest pivot in our trajectory as a company was about 4-5 years ago. That's also more or less the time frame that I'm with the company, but completely disconnected, transformation and myself, where we transformed from a publishing business. So we were a live scoring app. We added newsrooms across different languages, pumping out our own articles, trying to build up a user base, which by 2018 we had around 16, 17 monthly active users, primarily or almost exclusively on the mobile app, so have ever been a mobile-first company. But then pivoted the business in the sense from publisher to platform. So what we actually aim at doing ever since is to provide a platform for content owners and creators in the digital football media landscape and open up our access to the install base that we built up over the past decade to third parties, and ultimately are matchmakers. Matchmakers between those in the digital football media ecosystem who create and own content. You can think about club leagues, federations, players, media blogs, but also broadcasters, and that is the remit that I am heading. They create content, they partially pay a bunch of money to be allowed to create content, especially when it comes to the broadcasters. And they are seeking an audience to reach, engage, monetize, and that's what we try to do today, to be a platform business to match supply with demand.
Can you do an example of games, matches that I can stream on your app?
Yeah, I would love if this event is in Germany, Italy, or UK, because then you could all pop up your OneFootball app. And in those markets, the question is rather who is not on OneFootball yet when it comes to the broadcasters. So let's say in Germany, probably the biggest players that come to mind, in addition to Dine, since you're not in OneFootball in football yet, we don't have a base for partnering just yet. But Sky Sports, DAZN, Deutsche Telekom, I mean, those who are dominating the German football broadcasting landscape, they're all on OneFootball. And maybe I can finish it off with that one, that we try to reimagine distribution and monetization of football content. So we are not trying to resell the DAZN subscription again or the Sky subscription again, but we are repackaging, or those companies are repackaging on our platform the offering, using our monetization portfolio like single game pay-per-views, like team season passes, league season passes, becoming more an e-commerce business than a subscription business. And we are the facilitator. And yeah, that's what we do. That's what the OTT business vertical does. But importantly, it's bigger than that. So we are embedded in this broader ecosystem where hopefully the fan has a reason to open the app not only on match day, but all 7 days a week.
So always staying in Germany, Andreas Heyden, with the long career in many other different things, but then Dine. Tell us about the career and Dine.
Thanks. Great being here. So I've been in the internet business roughly 30 years, in the online video business roughly 20 years, and sports roughly 10 years. I tried to shape the digital picture and the digital distribution of the Bundesliga over 7 years, and having spent 7 years in sports, in football, we thought it's time to move on and do something for the other sports. And in no country in the world, nearly no country in the world that I know of, is the difference between the first sport and the second most favorite sport so big like in Germany. So football is football is football is football, and then it's first league, second league, third league, women's league, fourth league, fifth league, regional league, etc. And then there's handball. So we came up with the idea how...
Handball is the game that you play. I don't know, maybe they don't know maybe they don't know handball.
I will come to the...
Okay.
So when realizing that, and we were part of that situation because we were able to grow football that big in Germany. We came to the realization, like in the real estate business, go into undervalued areas and go into areas that you can develop. And we were able to acquire nearly all rights, relevant rights in Germany next to outside football. So we got handball. The German Handball League is the premier league of handball in the world. It's the strongest league in the world. Basketball, table tennis, volleyball, and hockey, field hockey. We have those exclusively on our platform, always the National League, the Women's, the First League, Second League, the Women's League, European competitions, etc. And we create a home of this sport. So we have acquired nearly all rights that were available and that are there for home of basketball, home of handball, home of hockey, etc. Because the data behind this, and roughly in Germany we have 50 million households. Half of the population is interested in sports. One half is interested in football. That's roughly 23 million. We are there for the other half, for the 17 million.
That's a fascinating story. Another fascinating story, it's Cowboy Channel. A bit more familiar for the audience, maybe.
Well, Carlo, Dan, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell you about the Cowboy Channel. I've been in streaming since 1996. And I've always wondered, I could plug in a television and it streamed back in the 90s. Why is this so hard? I have gone through iterations of the Real Player, XMTV, and streaming has always been difficult when it used to be so easy. Currently, I'm at the Cowboy Channel, and we stream 950 live rodeos per year. In order to really understand rodeo, you need to understand the NFR, which happens in Las Vegas. It's 2 weeks in the 1st of December. For one day, we are the 4th grossing largest app on the iTunes store for one day. Actually, it's more like 45 minutes. But the entire Western world coalesces around the NFR. What we've done is take the sport of rodeo, which used to be very disparate. They would be in very small towns all over the country, and created one place where people could actually watch them and follow it as a sport, rather than a town like a town fair with a rodeo happening. And since our launch in 2020, we've gone from nothing to 120,000 paying subscribers. And it's really, in my opinion, fulfilling a need by elevating a sport that people always wanted and giving them access to it. And so what we've really done is attempted to treat rodeo with the same respect that a lot of the larger sports have, and mostly by stealing the same concepts from a lot of the larger platforms like MLB, what Tim's doing at NASCAR. You'll see some of those features in our apps.
Okay, so it was fascinating, I told you. So as we have kind of an impeding sentence there that says the complex, my next question is why something that seems to be so appealing to everybody loves it, in theory there's a lot of money moving around, why it is complex and in which way it is complex? So what is the problem? One of the things that I mean, in my view, what happened is streaming arrives, there is a lot of resistance. There is a lot of people saying this is only for mobile, nobody will watch a game on a mobile phone, streaming doesn't mean anything. Like now people are saying TV is dead, and I think everybody said linear and not really dead, right? Or pay TV is dead, or cable is dead. On the other end, in that moment, people realize, and in different organizations, in sport, etc., realize that everybody can create an OTT, no? And if you've been in the business like some of us, there was a moment where you had this question from the CEO or CMO as a techie or product guy, why should we launch a website? Why should we launch a Facebook page? Why should we launch an app? What? No? And now at some point, someone would ask, why should we launch an OTT? But it seems an easy path. So We take some platform, possibly a SaaS platform, and we launch. We have the content, we create a bit more content, and we go. The problem is that very often, clearly the rights were already reserved and sold in some cases. On the other hand, the one thing that maybe these techie product B2B people like us didn't realize it, direct to consumer marketing is a different game. And so what we are seeing now is, I think US and just to simplify, US and Europe, then MENA, Asia is a different story. It's more complex, but keep US and EU, the media business is a bit different, the ecosystem is a bit different. But I think what happened is that at some point, we are in a phase where people are trying to rebundle, okay? This is what I'm observing, but Christy, what is the problem? Give me your version of my mumbling.
Well, I think one of the things that frustrates me the most in this industry is how little focus there is on consumers. So very frequently, groups of executives and people charged with developing these products and services are doing it almost in a vacuum. I can't tell you how many times I've seen groups working on product plans and business plans that are simply replicating somebody else's product or business plan without giving consideration to the consumers that they're targeting and what they might want and what their habits might be. So I think we saw a lot of copycat products in the space, and that has not necessarily benefited the consumer. And the most obvious example, which we all know, is that Netflix had a lot of funding, spent a lot of money, was not required to be profitable. And meanwhile, you had public companies trying to follow their example and then, and spending way too much money for subpar products. And then when it comes to the difference between, let's say, the US and the rest of the world, the US is a very specifically complex and diverse market. And we've seen people sometimes try to follow US examples, which are not always good. And so we've kind of ended up with a mess and a jumble for consumers. And then I would just say that, this sort of the walled garden mentality, keeping one's data to oneself. Like I said, I ran TV Guide back in the day, and frankly, one of the beauties of the guide, the electronic programming guide, is that everybody gave data. Competitors gave data so that consumers could easily make choices. And now in this world of streaming, we just don't have that. So as a consumer, you're navigating, depending on your device, your subscriptions, et cetera, and you could have one TV in one room of your house and another TV of a different brand in another room, and the journey is completely different. And then on the content provider side or on the distribution side, that one user has different habits in different rooms of their own house, and you're looking at data that's you're trying to parse to understand these consumers, and you don't even know what you're looking at. So I don't know. I could go on.
So you think
Yeah.
one of the problem is discovery in the end? Not discovery the brand, but discovery of content, of sport content. So.
I don't know. I mean, just, consumer packaged goods companies actually do a lot more, in my experience, consumer product testing before they put things out in the market. And in the world of streaming and content, I think we've seen so many products launched that that no consumers even looked at before they launched. And I'm not going to name names right now.
Okay.
But you're all subscribed to at least one of them, I guarantee. I would bet on it.
I don't want to say I don't agree, but convince me that 800 or 8,000 channels with a remote command is better than what we have today.
Well, that's not what, I'm not saying that was better. I'm saying what made that function at all was the sharing of data. And there, you couldn't even create something that complex to provide guidance in the streaming world.
That I agree.
Yeah.
Yannick, what is the problem?
What is the problem?
of
Okay.
the sport business? Why it is complex?
I mean, I think we have already identified that there are a bunch of problems, including information, accessibility, all of that. And you can go as much macro or micro as you want in order to define problems. So I would prefer to keep it as macro as possible to kick it off. I think ultimately sports in particular is in a video entertainment marketplace that is competing for consumers and their limited resources, time and money. But sports is not the only one. We are competing with other entertainment offerings, which may or may not, right now and as of today, have a more attractive proposition to the end consumer. And ultimately, you mentioned Netflix, Spotify, they have reset the expectations that an end consumer nowadays has when it comes to value for money. And I think this might be one of the bigger macro challenges in the grand scheme of things, that sports itself, regardless of individual companies, sports itself has to stay competitive to capture part of the available attention, part of the available wallet share. And I think there is some innovation to be had. So we are not running out of options. But I think that's the squeeze that right now I would say that the broadcasters are feeling, but inevitably it would trickle down at some point, because at some point even you, for example, wouldn't be willing to pay the money that you pay if you don't generate a return on the investment. So it would trickle down to the rights owners at some point. But in the very macro sense, this competition for the end consumer, who nowadays with all the abundance of choice and option is really empowered. And I think especially the power and the leverage along the value chain has changed. And I think the consumer is in actually quite nice bargaining position right now, even though we have those challenges, discovery, information, and so on.
But I know you're a numbers guy. You're one of my numbers guy, and you love the economics. I think the profitability of the business is the big issue, because you mentioned Netflix, and we saw the numbers recently. It's profitable. Others, not really. Spotify, not profitable. So between the sport entities, the media entities, big tech, if at the end the profitability of the ecosystem is not there, there is a big issue.
I mean, profit is an equation, right? You have revenue and costs. And I think back to satellite and cable pay TV packages, this has been probably the single most powerful revenue engine ever invented. And I think this is the monetization gap that we now have to close as this linear to streaming transition. How can we increment the level of monetization in streaming that we can afford the costs? If we can't sustainably afford the costs, probably revenues of rights owners will adjust, because it can't run on a deficit forever. But absolutely.
Andreas.
I wouldn't speak of a problem. I would say, compared to other entertainment businesses, we have magical content. We have magical content because there is an intrinsic motivation and search and demand by customers who love their sport. On the other hand side, we have a situation where we have to be present at every touch point of the customer's life, because I'm with you, we're fighting for a shared wallet of time. So coming up with a business model that enables you to have a strong own offering, but at the same time be present within networks and distribution partners, to be encapsulated into the customer experience at a partner and bringing your content that they desperately seek to the place where they already have a subscription, is something that I believe will be one of the keys to the future for success. Yes, everybody wants to have a fair share for bringing the customers to the audience. On the other hand side, you don't have customer acquisition cost. But being present on that point of usage, it's going to be extremely important. And at the same time, the challenge is we're doing the Mount Everest of entertainment in sport. The sport is going to happen whether you're ready or not. If your app is ready or not, if your stream works or not, the sport doesn't care. And this creates often customer dissatisfaction, and even more in building up on your point there, we have to invest into bulletproof productions, bulletproof products that we don't create customer acquisition, customer that the customers get satisfied because the value of the content loses its value over time within seconds once the final whistle has happened.
I think this morning Dan had a fireside chat with Matt Strauss from NBCU, and he explained we had a double model of B2B monetization and direct to consumer. We wanted to recreate it also in streaming because it's important. You need at least 2 or more revenue streams, especially when each revenue stream is getting lower. What is your view?
Well, I actually want to thank Christy for bringing up thinking of the end user first. In 2023, we had a massive crash during our biggest event for 45 minutes, and we had 5,000 emails, phone calls, and one of the things we did was we have a customer service department where if you call, a human answers. I personally helped call 5,000 people back over 3 sleepless nights. And we were able to retain about 98% of those people. At the end, they were just happy to hear a voice. So that's massive, but it's also important because they'll tell you what you want. On our app's first iteration, people were having a hard time finding live. Seemed obvious to me, not to this group, so I put a live button. I mean, is it redundant? Sure, but it's what they want and it solved the problem. In my opinion, one of the biggest issues happening right now is really discovery and converting new fans. I'm watching in the industry sports coalesce in the big 3. I mean, it's a knife fight between Apple, Google, and Amazon right now. In my opinion, Amazon's winning. An avid sports fan is going to find the sport. I'm a baseball fan. I remember Facebook's debacle with baseball. I still watched it with all the little thumbs going up during home runs. I mean, it was a disaster, but I watched it. I found it. Even though I have an MLB subscription, I watch Friday Night Baseball on Apple. I don't like it, but I'll watch it. If you're an avid fan of a sport, you're going to find it. I mean, it does suck that it's all fragmented, but it is what it is. It should be better. Now, at the same time, I also see that consolidation, but then on the counter side, an extreme, problematic, in my opinion, proliferation of fast channels. For $3,000, I could spin one up on knitting or whatever I want. And it reminds me of the early days of satellite where you have 10,000 channels and no way of discovering anything. I've done the research in my audience, and my saturation point's about 350,000 subscribers. What do I do then? How do I attract new subscribers? I had a great conversation with the folks at NASCAR, and they have the same problem we do. If you don't know how NASCAR works, it looks like a car driving in a circle. If you don't know how rodeo works, it looks like a guy bouncing on a horse. Once you know the rules, it opens up and it becomes as good as any sport out there. I mean, NASCAR, I didn't know what it was. I love it now. I mean, it's fantastic because I know what the rules are. So how do you create new fans? NASCAR is easy. Bring them to a NASCAR event, you will be a fan. Rodeo, similar, but you have to have the rules explained. And to contradict myself, that's where I think fast actually makes some sense. Going to some of the larger channels that have existing brands in sport, taking some of our premium content. I don't want to say dumb this down at all, but respect the actual avid fans, but at the same time, explain the rules to people, which is one of also the values of social media channels. Give people many entry points to include them into a sport with sometimes arcane rules.
So as a dynamic moderator, let's come back with a short opinion on fast.
I would completely support you. What we see is the demand for subscribers at the weekend is generated during the week. So in our content strategy, there's one quote, pace, greatest strength is free. Because if you own all rights, you can slice the dice the rights, how they make sense for your business model. We see a lot of usage on free content during the week because every day there are stories that we pump out on our sports, but it's always leading to the weekend and the sign-ups we see at the weekend when the matches are happening. So can be free a window into the sport? Yes. Will it make sense to be the 578th channel on Amazon Prime channels? No. So I think some sort of linear accessibility of sports and having a little bit cashback on or generating a little bit revenue by being ad funded, yes, it's a possibility. Will it be a real business model, at least for our niche sports? Not. There are 7 million handball fans in Germany. How do I tell them how to find that fast channel? It doesn't make sense.
Hold on, I like this guy. No, I can't agree more. One of the things we're seeing is in terms of just bringing fans in is they find it through traditional ways. Google. Yeah, Google. So what we do is we're investing a lot of money in PPC campaigns, which is kind of ironic since Google is one of the main competitors that's doing this through YouTube.
I bring the ball back. Yannick, you like fast or not? Don't say you agree because I don't like when my panel agrees, sorry.
And then I switched a little bit topics or a topic that they touched upon, because I think both of you touched on the challenge to break through this glass ceiling of diehards. It's not rocket science, I imagine, to convert the diehard, again, handball fan. The diehard handball fan will jump through all the loops necessary to find and ultimately also pay to get access to the content they seek. The problem is there are not millions of handball fans in Germany. There might be, but not tens of millions. There might not be tens of millions of rodeo fans. And this is really how to expand the addressable market and convert, how to break through this glass ceiling, which, as said, is not rocket science, but then it becomes expensive, I guess, to customer acquisition and maybe even cost prohibitive. But I think that is a common challenge that beyond their opinions on fast, that those two guys talked about.
Yeah. Christy, what do you think about fast?
Okay, and not just because you want me to, but I will take a somewhat contrarian view, which is that I think that we're in such early days of fast, and not a lot of what's out there right now is less than ideal. And so I think of fast right now as being like early 90s in the internet. It's like white pages with blue links on it. And if that was before you were born, then you can look it up. But it's such early days, and in fact, it is the internet, and yet we treat it like cable. So we replicated cable on the internet, which was not a great experience. It could be so much better, and I think this is, I'll talk from a big company perspective. A lot of the big companies treat fast like an extra monetization platform for their library content, which is why we have certain show-specific channels that nobody asked for. And I think it could be a much better, more interesting and rich experience if we treated it a little bit more like the technology, technology-friendly and consumer-friendly platform that it could be.
I mean, let me give you my 2 cents so I'm not the only one not opinionating on fast. I think in a nutshell, I think key is what's the purpose that your fast channel is supposed to serve. And you alluded to it. Is it a monetization play for the backlog library? Is it a customer acquisition tool? It's supposed to serve both purposes. Then what's the trade-off? Yeah. So that might be another perspective.
Well, I would also say since I have a lot of experience running apps and within AVOD services, SVOD services, and fast channels, and they're all completely different. And there shouldn't be, and in YouTube channels as well. So it's not a one-size-fits-all strategy. You have to have a different strategy for YouTube, a different strategy for fast, a different strategy for VOD, however you want to slice it. And that's what makes this such a complex business right now in sports and in other verticals. You have to be good at a lot of different things if you really want to build a business and a brand. And so going back to what Matt Strauss was saying earlier, it probably doesn't make sense to just do one thing. And I would say in sports, fast is more difficult than other verticals because of rights issues. But frankly, one thing that we do know from fast is that live, and it doesn't matter what vertical, whether it's news or sports performs incredibly well, much, much better. It would be great if we had some third-party data in the space so that we could verify it a little bit better. But for sure, and this has been known for years, live performs very well, and not fake live, real live, for whatever reason. And so I think to the extent that we can start to see some more experimentation with live sports and get some more data on it, we can really improve the experience and also the business model. But that's just my opinion.
I mean, I was about to jump in. I mean, fast to me only makes sense for live. Live sports, live news. Otherwise, why do I want to watch 13 minutes of a real world episode from 1996 and actually have to search for that? It makes no, I'm about to short sell.
Those are like made for
fast.
advertising channels, and not to single out the real world channel, but it's like made for advertising websites. There's now made for advertising
one of the
channels.
problems we're seeing with fast is, we recently incorporated SSAI advertising into our services. And in the past 3 years, we've watched CPMs go from $40, now 7 to 12 is considered good. And it's because of the proliferation of fast. From an advertiser's perspective, it's fantastic because you can cherry pick DMAs, you can get psychographics, and you can really tailor a campaign that's not the carpet bombing way that it used to be. But from a content owner's perspective, it's hurting us just in terms of secondary revenue.
So just to add a bit, some news from yesterday, I think, compared with the time zone. One, Disney Plus announced they will have some linear channel showing in the app, which is a semi-fast embedded into an OTT. I don't know. They also announced they bought UEFA competition rights in Sweden and Denmark, so Disney Plus buying rights in those countries. There's so many things happening that is kind of confusing. Also today I've heard, I don't remember which one of the fireside session, talking about fast becoming more sophisticated and more personalized. And I mean, there was a logo that appeared in my mind. Maybe it's a bit extreme as an example, but that's TikTok. So we're saying it's a passive. So we're passive. We receive content and it's personalized. So it's an amazing experience. But that's TikTok, in my view. So maybe it's a bit extreme.
That's what?
TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
If I want
and YouTube.
Yeah, if I want to experience a linear experience, like back in the day, you watch TV, you didn't really know what's coming on. If you miss it, you miss it. It's now my news feed. Exactly. I completely agree with you there. It's a TikTok, it's an Instagram feed. You discover content, you stay in it for hours. That's a linear usage where you are within one flow of consuming one kind of media channel. Yeah.
And maybe because you mentioned the news that certain streaming services introduce linear feeds on platform instead of off-platform strategy, fast, whatever. I think, if you're opening up the most popular streaming services today, it's a 100% lean-forward experience. And I think there is value in actually curation and discovery being curated for you, just lean back and tune in. And it's a discovery or engagement tool on platform. So I think the product, which is the linear product, has multiple purposes on and off platform, but the purpose might vary depending on where to put it.
And maybe, as Christy was saying at the beginning, it shouldn't be us deciding what is best. It should be the consumer, or us researching the consumer properly to tell us what is best.
It would be great to see some more experimentation, and this isn't a sports example, but and anybody know the Criterion Channel app? It's cool movies, and it's mostly been an SVOD service for most of its life. And last week they launched like a linear channel that is essentially movies that they have the rights to, but just streaming in a continuous. So they've basically replicated TCM, the Turner Classic Movies channel, within Criterion Channel. That's a cool idea. I'd be curious to see how it all performs. And I think what I'd love to see is more launching and experimentation in the entire space versus unfortunately what we have right now, which is kind of over-automated, I would say.
Let me be one provocative thought.
I give you a few moments.
How many? No, I wanted to ask him if I'm allowed, because I bet we have the same number. How long before an event do customers tune in?
We have a 24/7 channel.
Yeah.
And
But if you have live events?
live events, about 5 minutes before. Yeah.
For us, also 5 minutes to 45 seconds. So we are in sports business. We're not in the movie business. So we are creating a moment in time that only exists in this moment of time. I don't see a customer behavior.
Not if you watch it on demand after it, but I'm joking.
Yeah, that's actually 20% of our reach on top. But I don't see a usage pattern where customers rewatch last week's game to prepare for this week's game or something like this. Sport goes on, off, and maybe having a fast channel which then goes from reruns and magazine contents, gets a live window, and then it goes back to reruns and magazine content. Maybe that could deliver additional reach. But if you are able to speak to your customers and let your customer know your club is playing in the next 5 minutes, tune in now. You have such a high activity on this content that you don't see in any kind of other sport.
I mean, very quickly, Apple TV is doing that brilliantly, where all of a sudden you're watching a basketball game and a little thing comes up saying you 3 minutes left. But I want to contradict myself with Fast. I actually think it is a very good bridge medium for bringing in older people that are used to the convenience of cable television. But that being said, I think what we're all talking about is a differentiation between types of viewing. I always call this the hunt for Red October effect. If it's on Netflix, unedited right there, I'll never select it. If it's on YouTube TV with 30 minutes left and commercials, I'll always watch it. And the reason for that is I'm looking on my phone during it. It provides comfort. And passive discovery, I do think, has a place, but I think it needs to be consolidated with better curation. I mean, why not give an influencer the ability to program, 5 hours of time, let them market it to their own people?
Okay, I want to go a bit in the discussion of the next subject, which is, we talked about it already, fragmentation bundling. So there seems to be an appetite, I think scared by the big tech groups, for big media to create the holy grail of the one destination, right? And I recently thought, okay, in the past, even now, and in Europe, you can take Sky as an example, the fact that Sky was always so attached to the box, whatever box it was, now it's Sky Q or whatever, but in the box, you can put a lot of stuff. In the last few, something that, I don't know, 7 years ago, we would say would never happen. You now have a Skybox where Netflix, everything is in. So I have one subscription and everything that I care is there. Quite simple in the end, okay? But that's because I have a box. If you go in pure streaming, it has to be an offer, right? And packaging, while a box is basically an app store, nowadays, okay, more or less.
Look at the Zone. They have the Game Pass as an app inside,
okay,
and they don't have a box. And that's
that
point. I think you have to go to the customer touch points where they are.
My next example is the Zone. But the box is a clear way of aggregating almost everything, right? In pure digital world, either you create an app store, or you somehow, like Amazon is doing with the channels and Disney is doing with the channels, you create a mini version of that product into your ecosystem. It's not the same. Because the transition, NFL Game Pass International was an app that my company managed for 6 years in the past, my ex-company. And then it went to the Zone. Obviously, the Zone cannot inject in the Zone app another app. It became a part of the Zone offering, right? Even in terms of the story. So my problem with bundling when we talk about sport, sport has a very sophisticated discovery. I did a lot of Olympic streaming, and streaming the Olympics with NBC at the beginning, the discovery of the Olympics that where 300 events are happening in the same day is a nightmare. So if you want to do discovery for sports streaming properly, it has, for the moment, to be a dedicated UX. The moment you put sport with entertainment, maybe it's much better, but you dilute the richness of sport. That's from a sport heart, sorry. That's my view. So what do you think is the end game? So will there be mega bundling, because it's the only way to survive, and then some vertical sport for the avid fan? Will these two models coexist, or there is another solution? Let Christy start for once.
Okay. Yes, for once. I've started almost every time. I think I've started the majority of times. In terms of bundling with sports, I mean, it does provide, having multiple verticals in your business model does not mean that those multiple verticals have to be the same UX on every platform. So I think that what am I trying to say here is that they don't necessarily all have to be in the same product with the same, like you're saying, the Olympics are a very specific example, and they need to be their own customer experience. But that said, the business model for media companies of having entertainment, sports, and news actually works pretty well, because news is a daily habit. Sports is it's either an every week or multiple days a week, and then entertainment is a little bit more contained, and so it does help the overall business model of a lot of media companies to have those different verticals, and then I think sometimes the mistake has been made to assume that they need to have the same customer experience in platforms and consumption and distribution. That's my...
Yannick?
I would say with the bundle, we are right back to the future, I guess. The one thing where I would disagree a little bit, that this is a one-size-fits-all solution to all the problems that we identified, is that there is no one-size-fits-all anymore. I think one of the differences compared to 1 or 2 decades ago is that just tastes and habits are much more heterogeneous nowadays and structured than they were before. So I think we have to become much more sophisticated and granular in terms of packaging, pricing, promoting, placing. I mean, this is the one thing I took from university, 4 Ps. In terms of how to go to market, because there are so many different market segments, and each segment is receptive to a different offering. And there's a big segment in the market, it might be the biggest one, that does nothing else but wishing back this bundle, this one destination where I get my all-you-can-eat and I'm good and set. But there are also certain segments in the market who love, for example, flexibility. They want to feel good about what they pay for. So they might be willing to pay 80% of the money for like 10% of the content, because they don't have the left and right that they are not interested in but paying for. So the bundle will be a big thing going forward in this whole re-aggregation and everything. But I think we have to become more sophisticated, because the consumer marketplace is more sophisticated.
Andreas, maybe talk about DAZN and what they're trying to do. Yeah, okay. I know it's a competitor, but...
No, but I think...
So they do it fanatics, they're doing betting, they're trying to add not only bundling sport, they're trying to bundle services.
Oh, okay. When we think about first the question there, we think about 3 layers, and your view with the glass ceiling, I completely see that. There is a certain group of fans who want to buy it from the original. They're hardcore fans. They want to have more content than other places can deliver to them, to their favorite sport. They will always go to the vertical platforms. Then you have sports fans who are customers of another service, who book you maybe just for an event, or maybe just for the final of the season, or something like this, where you are one additional revenue stream for that third-party platform, next to e-commerce, next to betting, etc. It's about, we are helping the partner to raise their customers' ARPU. And then the highest level is, I would say, the casual fans or the interest in that sport. And you have to play that with social media, because with all the performance marketing campaigns, you get the base layer, but you can only advertise to what demand is there. And with social media, you create demand and stories.
Yep. Completely agree with that. I think we're approaching this the wrong way, that we're looking at fragmentation, solving it from a tech perspective, when it's obviously a rights holder perspective. It's going to be as fragmented because the NFL is going to slice and dice as much as they can to get as much money as they can. And that's not going to end until contracts are up. So you're always going to have fragmentation because the rights holders are going to get money doing it.
But I think that we can solve, because if we look at the sports broadcasting market, I often think in two parts, this market into the sports rights market, where we see this increased slicing and dicing just in order to maximize and increase media rights income. And then we have the sports programming market, where we need to come up yet again with a consumer proposition that consumers are willing to spend time and money on. So the slicing and dicing trickles down from the rights market into the programming market, and now the programming market has the challenge to, with all those bits and pieces, to, again, price and package those in a form and fashion that is attractive enough to then, to the point that I made earlier, compete with the other media products or entertainment products in the marketplace. So I'm not saying we are getting, or broadcasters getting a bad hand dealt by the rights owners, but it's somewhat creating the challenge in the first place.
I mean, if you want to solve churn, put all of the sport in one place.
And that was my next question and last question. We have 7 minutes and 51 seconds. Tell me about churn. You have a specific churn, non-churn problem. Tell me your story about churn and retention.
It took us a long time to do this, but we have a 3% churn rate. And it's because we have, I'll say it, we gamed pricing. A monthly, the biggest event, our Super Bowl, is the NFR, 2 weeks of rodeo in December. The only way to watch that is with an annual subscription. Monthly is for discovery. If you want to watch an individual rodeo, a casual fan that's coming in just to get their feet wet, or again, watch Cheyenne, Frontier Days. But if you want to watch the main event that everybody wants, you're locked into an annual package. And then auto-renew. It solved it for us.
Andreas, how do you fight churn and keep retention high?
We'll see. It's the first season. At the moment, we're very satisfied, but I see the same. Germany is a little bit, or Europe is a little bit special. So there are certain customer rules. You can't do 2-year contracts. You only allowed to do yearly contracts and stuff like that. Back in the day, Sky always did 2 years. Now we have a healthy mix between yearly subscriptions that we sell at the start of the beginning of the season. Monthly we sell now at the end of the season, and it goes now into a renewal. I think if you create value for the customer, then you are in a good position. If your products work, if your stream work, if the content is great, but you have to realize churn is real, and you have to put in your expectations.
But I think data is also important, because I remember you telling me that you had, I don't remember, table tennis fans behave in a certain way. The golf fans behave in a different way.
Yeah, you have to cater to the specific audience, and the one audience is more mature in data, the other wants to have more magazine content. I think if you're within the given budgets, you have to create for this vertical user group of the specific sport a specific way to cater to them. We fight churn. We give 10% of our revenue back to the youth development of the leagues. So in the sign-up process, the user decides which of our 5 sports he wants us, not him, us, we are not Starbucks, or Whole Foods or something. We take from our revenue 10% and give it back to the youth development. And we have agreements with the leagues that they have to present to their fans individual concepts, what they do with the money that we give them, so they speak for us and advertise us.
This is really innovative, I think. I never heard about it.
There is no other service who does that.
Yannick, churn retention for OneFootball?
I mean, I think regarding to OneFootball, since I said OneFootball is bigger than OTT only, it's about stacking products and services that, as a portfolio on aggregation, that experience makes it as sticky as possible. But I really liked what Andreas said with accepting churn as a cost. It's just like there is subscriber acquisition marketing cost. I would say there are subscriber retention marketing costs, and it's probably or likely more cost efficient or more inexpensive to retain a customer than to acquire a customer yet again. And why it's important? Because ultimately it's part of the customer lifetime value equation. And that goes back to the point I made earlier regarding what's the difference between streaming and pay TV bundle. It's the stickiness, the scale, and the pricing power. And stickiness and churn is certainly, or maybe the one where streaming is most challenged, but because again, Netflix, Spotify, have somewhat redefined the expectation. The expectation nowadays is that I can cancel by a tip of a button on a monthly basis. And that is different than having a physical set-top box in your living room where the customer support is not available and you are stuck with a 2-year contract anyway. So that's why it's important. And the challenge is that it might be the one metric where streaming is really challenged compared to the traditional video distribution model.
And Christy, you're advising companies. What is your recipe for fight churn and increase retention?
I mean, I think in the streaming space right now, one thing that that is so key to addressing churn is data, and we just don't have enough of it and enough access to it. So most services have limited data compared to other products they might be putting out into the world. And so what I would say is you really have to understand the data that you do have as best you can, and also be fighting to be able to access more data, because it's so complex, and we need to simplify it.
Maybe one more point on that, because I was so fascinated by your point with acceptance and baking in as a cost, that your point regarding, for me, we are often, or like broadcasters are considered media companies. But I think, including when it comes to churn, to become more efficient, they have to become technology companies. Because for me, it's really where to spend the incremental dollar. Is it actually in content? Or is the incremental dollar better invested in becoming more sophisticated about managing a customer, becoming maybe more technology, data-driven entity, and maybe that might be the better incremental return or marginal return on money that you are spending. Might not be the newest blockbuster, but actually the tech stack that can make a difference.
In my opinion, one of the biggest indicators of churn is how long someone spends searching for something, especially in VOD catalogs. How many of you have gone to Netflix every night and see the same offerings that you don't watch? Why is Netflix not saying, this person has not watched this, show them something different? Then I go to Prime, I go to Hulu, it's the same problem. The same offerings are there. It's never shuffled. So the amount of time spent looking around, this is a solvable problem. I mean, it knows what I want, knows what I like to watch, but it also knows what I don't like to watch. Don't show me that.
It's a fantastic closing. We go back to the EPG.
It is a tale as old as time. I will say it seems solvable. I'm actually not sure it is. I mean, it's just like, there's just going to be different levels of frustration and satisfaction with discovery. That's like such a cop-out answer, but
it's an accurate one.
So
it's hard.
If you have a question that we can answer in 30 seconds, 40 seconds, please do it. Otherwise, I feel a bit guilty because we had a lot of fun here, and I hope we have the lights, we don't see you. I hope it was not too boring or too confusing for you. No questions, so we can close in time, which I think is what Dan asked us. Thank you for listening and the patience to listen.